Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Apartment Department, the podcast for multifamily marketers by multifamily marketers. I'm Ann Baum, your co-host. I am VP of Marketing at Town Properties. With me, as always, is my co-host, Chris Johnson, marketing leader at Irwin R. Rose in Dallas, Texas. We have a wonderful, wonderful guest with us today, Chelsea Kneeland from Multifamily Insider. She is the Innovation Insider, and we wanted to bring Chelsea on today because she really is at the forefront of trends from several different standpoints. First, being part of Multifamily Insiders, which is a large organization dedicated to the multifamily industry, and also in her role as Innovation Insider. And so we thought we'd bring Chelsea in today to talk about what she is seeing from kind of a future standpoint, a trend standpoint. Where is multifamily really moving, both from an innovation standpoint and then also, of course, from a marketing standpoint? So with that, Chelsea, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you just to introduce yourself, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm Chelsea Kneeland, Innovation Insider of Multifamily Insiders. And I have had a lot of excitement this year in getting to see all the new things that are happening in our world. I think there's been an incredible amount of change and innovation in the last few years. And it's been exciting to see ever since we got, as I lovingly say, trebucheted in the pandemic into tech, right? Our industry kind of got forced into everything that they've been dragging their feet on for a long time. So it's been an exciting couple of years.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're so glad to have you. What are some of the trends that you're seeing right now? I mean, what are people in multifamily really talking about?
Have you guys heard about AI? I don't know. But
Chris may have.
no, I make that joke because at some point I'm like, okay, guys, I get it. And we are all so excited about it. And there's so much to discuss. But I'm really starting to see what I love, which is the nuance of a new piece of technology. For a long time, I think everyone was just trying to figure out what ChatGPT was. And I was like, guys, that's not it. From a marketing standpoint, that's not where we want to be. And now I'm really excited that we're starting to see a lot of conversations around how to personalize an experience using an AI agent, or how to really use this technology to make sure that we're giving maybe a more human touch, which sounds counterintuitive, but figuring out which demographics our clients are kind of representing and really specifying what would be important to them or what would matter to them using this technology. So seeing more conversations around that. Of course, lots of conversations around centralization, how to do it well, where we're centralizing teams, a lot of specialty roles, which I personally love seeing. I've been screaming from the rooftops for about 25 years that your assistant manager might not be your best salesperson. And that's great and okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we need to have roles that really accelerate a set of skills that will lead us to being more successful. And so, yeah, I think centralization, AI is obviously a big topic. We're also seeing a really return, I hope, and focus on customer experience. So I've seen a ton of new customer experience roles at the executive level, which gets me really excited too. So
That's a lot. Those are all really exciting. I'm on a customer experience and brand kick right now, so we'll have to do a whole nother thing.
I'm very into this right now, y'all. Let's talk all about it, because I think that's where we should have been the whole time.
So last year, AIM, Shruti from Hampton, by Hilton, really talked about the financial value of brand and customer experience. And I thought that was a really interesting take, because I think before, brand and customer experience were kind of like, oh, it's important, but how do we financially prove? I feel like a lot of times all of the conversations revolve around kind of the balance sheet of a property, right? And so for a long time, things like branding, customer service, if you couldn't tie it back to an income or expense, then it was like, well, we don't need this because we're going to get leads. We're going to be able to, turn them into leases. And so tell us more about the conversations you're seeing around customer experience.
And first of all, I just have to tell you, I think it's wild that as an industry, we just refused to believe that customer experience could lead to better outcomes for our owners and managers. Like it just is wild to me, especially when you think about the parallels between our industry. I know we're not exactly the same, but our industry and the hotel industry, it's like, guys, we've never heard of the Four Seasons. We don't think that they get a premium for their exceptional customer service, but we're like, no, we're different. That doesn't
Yeah,
trans.
people need a place to live, so like it's fine.
Yeah, it just is wild to me. And I hope this doesn't, take any brands that are amazing in our industry and make them frustrated with me. But I really haven't seen one of our companies in multifamily really go after that elite kind of luxury experience and make themselves really exceptional in that branding and in that niche. So, not to get on a big tangent, but that is something I've waited for with kind of bated breath, is like, who's going to be the first company to really grab that we are the, stand head and shoulders above everyone else in our customer experience. We treat our residents at a certain level that you can only get here, and really grab that piece of the market, because I think it's out there. And I don't know about you guys. If you've seen it, please tell me, but I haven't.
No, I haven't seen it, but I agree with you. I mean, I think other industries have clear winners in that: hospitality, retail, even crossovers. I think, Blueprint, which is a great conference. There was a session where they were talking about this idea of branded residence buildings. And so brands like Ferrari and Gucci and really high-end luxury brands are putting their names on these branded residences, and they're attracting a premium. I think it was like 15 or 20% because their name is on those. So it exists, but I think you're right. I can think of companies that I think of from like operational excellence, or like,
Yes.
We want to emulate, but from a consumer standpoint, I don't know if that exists.
The first company I worked for, actually, and I don't know what they're doing today, I haven't been there in 15 years. They did all kinds of stuff that was different. They had a 30-day move out guarantee. If you weren't happy, you could move out, no questions asked. They would water plants when you left. They, if you needed help with your dog or cat during the day, our team would go out there and do it. And they really did take the customer seriously, and didn't matter whether they were paying $800 a month or $1,500, which was high at the time. But they did take care of their customers, and it does exist out there. I just think it's harder to find. And some of that might just be because maybe we think we're going to turn over. And so that's probably how operations looks at it. And that's the whole point of some of the conversations that Ann and I have, is bridging that gap to say we can save them. They may not move out if we do the right thing.
Yeah. I think that is so important. And I think that there is, again, starting to be more of a conversation around how we can capture more of our renewals at a higher ratio, and how we can make sure that people are happy and want to stay. And Chris, I do think it's been a long standing notion that, well, there's nothing we can do about X% of however many folks are going to move out. And I'll tell you, I did research many years ago about, what are the number of renewals that you're going to lose that there's nothing you can do about it? And then how many of the renewals are something that could be easily impacted? And I know it's not always as easy as it sounds, but we called them the 1-milers. So these were folks that were moving within 1 mile of this same community. And you want to tell me that that wasn't something that you could have kept or figured out how to make sure that they had a better situation or whatever it was. But one of the interesting things we figured out from that study was that people had kind of long-standing resentments by the time they put in their 30-day notice over something so small. And it was so frustrating to see as a former operator of properties, as I'm like, man, y'all let something tiny, tiny, tiny bubble and fester, whether it was they didn't get the right parking spot that they were promised when they moved in, or, whatever it was. And then that went on and on and on. And then every single thing after that made them angrier until they gave their notice. But it was something really fixable and easy to take care of. And it just didn't.
Well, that brings us back to innovation. And we have a lot of tools now in our industry that can help us with feedback.
Yep.
When these things happen, and we can take care of it right away. Personally, I use Opinion and I love it.
Yeah.
I get these opinions, and our teams can reach out right away. If our residents are not having a good experience, we can take care of it before it festers.
Yeah. I
And
think
it's
that's really
been wonderful for us. I don't know if you guys have that program, but it's been great.
I think there's also a lot that we do where we depend on getting data from someone being willing to reach out to us and tell us what's going on. So I'm always interested in where the innovation is and where the tech is leading us, where we can get data and information where someone isn't readily motivated to say, hey, here's the thing that's bothering me, or hey, I would love to continue living here, but the noise or the parking or whatever the thing is. Because I do think there are so many residents who aren't going to be motivated to leave a review or to reach out or to answer a survey. And I know that we're always trying to figure out new ways to get that data and get that information. But that silent group is really, I think, going to be something a puzzle that we need to figure out.
I think that's interesting because our survey completion rates, we do move in and move out, and they're between 10 and 15%. So
Yeah.
in that case, I've got 85 to 90% of people not, not saying anything. So then how do operators bridge the gap between the technology and is that where the human touch part comes in that you were talking about?
I think so. I really think that as much as we are moving forward in innovation and tech, we are still a relationship-based driven business. As much as we try sometimes to just be so tech forward, which is great, right? But there are so many instances where, as an example, I was helping a friend who was looking for an apartment because I love to do that to see what's going on. And they had sent a couple emails, leads to say, hey, this is what I'm interested in, and asked a couple really specific questions because they have a ginormous dog. They got sometimes immediate answers that I knew were tech driven.
Yep.
And their questions were never answered, though. That specific question did not get answered. They got a response within 2 hours or they got a response within 24 hours. But over and over and over again, I was like, nobody will tell us about the freaking dog. What is going on? And so I think, not to sound like I'm all over the place here, but that little piece is people still need a response to their specific question. People still need their specific issue taken care of and fixed. They still want to know that somebody is paying attention to the details. And I think that is where whoever figures out how to do this really well to marry tech and our, innovation, all of these cool things where we're using technology to respond faster or be better and free up our team's time, whoever figures out how to do that while not losing how to answer the question about the dog and while not losing how to figure out what the resident needs specifically and maintain that relationship, I think that's going to be, the group that gets ahead.
It's really funny that my wife just did a secret shot for me, and the same thing happened. She asked the question 3 times. It wasn't at our properties. I was just shopping. They never answered the question. And she told them when she wanted a tour, and the response that came back was, we'll set you up for a tour when you want a tour. And it was like, but we told you.
Yes. It's like read, right? And I know I get it, right? I've been in those shoes. I've initiated many of those programs that were great, but there is some disconnect that we have to figure out between tech that helps us with responsiveness or innovation that helps free up time for our teams and really making sure that we're actually listening and giving our customers what they want. And I think that's why we're seeing so many more customer experience leaders in our industry who are going to take a deep dive and look into this. Are we telling people about the dog policy when they ask? Are we answering questions? My goodness, my favorite, are we answering the phone? Why is this so difficult? And as I said with Justin Jones recently in a little chat we had one day venting, I said, in the year of our Lord 2025, we still cannot answer the phone. How is this possible? So yeah, I think there are lots of pieces that we are getting right and we're doing really well because, it is an incredibly difficult business, but we've got to figure out that where tech meets the human touch piece and make sure that we're actually doing the human touch part.
Yep. I think that goes back to kind of the role specialization you were talking about too. I'll give you an example. If I was a leasing person and I had to answer the phone, I would literally freak out. Like my heart is like beating thinking about answering the phone and talking to someone because there's like a script, there's certain it's too much. It's too much for my brain. And so I would probably not be a good fit for the leasing role, but that's kind of important to know, because we have to make sure that, you know, we're doing the right thing. We're telling people what's expected, that they're a good fit, that maybe roles are specialized. Maybe there's an outreach. I'm making up a terrible marketing word. It doesn't sound friendly, but like an outreach specialist at a property whose sole purpose is really to build relationships with the residents and make sure that they're happy. And I mean, so I think what besides customer experience, what other kind of role specialization are you seeing? Is there a trend right now?
I mean, I am seeing a lot of companies who are really specializing the leasing roles and centralizing those roles, which again, I think has been a long time coming. I'm seeing a lot of the kind of assistant manager accounting roles being rolled up into one role specifically that supports maybe multiple communities or as a multi-site role. Um, I've also been seeing a little bit of a return, and I'm going to say this carefully because I remember the days when this was huge of, and I don't know what we're calling this, but that like resident relations role. I think it's evolved incredibly. I, can remember all too fondly in the early 2000s when I was a resident relations person. I was throwing pizza parties and showing movies at a property for, a percentage off my rent. And I think we've come a long way since then. But I think that role is really gaining traction again, and it's moving far beyond just that kind of pizza party movie situation of yesteryear and moving into really evaluating the resident experience from the beginning to the end, and then trying to form those relationships and making sure that residents feel a sense of community, because we know we've seen a million studies over and over and over and over again. It's like, how much more can we scream about this? That a sense of community directly translate to a sense of satisfaction at the communities. So I think we'll see a bigger increase in focus on those resident relation roles. And I'm starting to see this popping back up a lot.
Do our prospects want innovation and technology? So let me give you an example. Do they like that the move-in process can be fully automated and they don't have to talk to anybody and they can do it on their phone and they can get a checklist and all the, there's a lot of technology that does that. You can do the same with move outs. We have a lot of technology once you move in. What are you hearing about what is working and what isn't and what people actually want? Because sometimes I think they actually do like talking to you.
Yeah. Chris, you and I are on the same page, and I'm kind of tackling a little bit because I've been secretly, quietly yelling about this a little bit. So I think there are some prospects and residents who love that, right? There are people who love to never talk to anyone on the phone and want to do the whole thing. But when it stops being something they love is when they can't figure out the technology, when the Wi-Fi at their front door doesn't work. And so they can't get their tech-enabled lock to unlock their door, which I just talked to someone about for like 30 minutes, that it was their Wi-Fi. It was their mom can't get the door of her community or her apartment to unlock because the cell coverage drops right like at her front door, basically. And she's so frustrated. So I think lots of people want tech that makes their lives easier and smoother when it works, when it's not 14 different apps they have to download to use all the tech that we thought was a great idea. And I'm really seeing that people are starting to evaluate that better. I think the shiny penny theory happens where we get some new technology and we all go, ooh, this is cool. Let's grab it and make sure we're first adapters and it's going to be amazing. And we don't think about what that long-term experience is. And now we're starting to see folks really focusing on the tech stack, what it looks like all together, how it's going to work flawlessly, if it's making lives easier, if it's not. But I don't know specifically what residents do and don't want, but I do think what they need is someone to walk through their experience in their shoes and see what is working and what isn't. And I think that we also need to figure out, who are they calling for help? This is something I have seen and I'm seeing more and more of, is our leasing agents or our staff at our properties are not tech support. And they are spending so much time explaining how tech works. My goodness, explaining what the internet is to some residents, trying to help them download apps or help them log on and help them when things go wrong. And I think that is really something that we're missing, that we're going to see a lot of focus on, is where's the tech support for all of this prop tech and all of this innovation we have?
Do we have that coming down the pike? Have you talked to anybody that has some innovations coming for that?
I have not seen anyone taking over customer support yet. And I think a business opportunity, somewhere this is really an opportunity for someone to grab this and help, because our teams are overwhelmed. They're doing so much. We're expecting them to be everything to everyone. And now they're also answering, a gabillion calls a day about how their residents can't get their rent payment connected to their bank account, or how they can't, whatever the thing is, right? And it's just too much for them.
That's why they're not answering the phone. See, I'm with them.
Right?
Like, I'm there. Like, no, I cannot.
Yes. But no, I haven't seen anybody taking that on. Have you guys seen anyone talking about how much tech support is happening on site now?
No.
I think there's a couple companies that try. I'm not sure that they've gotten all the way there. I will say at my company, we have support in the office, and the teams can send the tech support to them, and we have a team at the office that takes care of it. So that's kind of nice. It takes it off their plate, and we'll get it fixed. But I do think you're right. I think there's an opportunity. I think on that note, I'd love to hear what you think the top 3 innovations are that are coming. What's new? What's coming in 2025 that's different that you found that we can really take advantage of, or has gotten better?
I think it's hard to think about what the specifics are, because everything seems to be more generalized. We have our big demo day event that's coming up in February. We do it twice a year, and we have all of these 19 different demos that come on and pop on. And some of the ones we've seen in the past, I'd say year, have just blown my mind and been really, really impressive. One of my favorites that we could not stop talking about, and I don't know that this is brand new innovation or tech, but I was so excited about it, is fire prevention and leak prevention technology that I'd never seen before, that would have blown my mind back in the day. So I think there will be a lot around that sort of like protecting properties, especially when we're seeing, unfortunately, all the terrible things that are happening in California and everywhere else. We have so many natural disasters and so many things happening there. So I think a focus on smart home tech that protects the company, protects the community, protects your residents more enhanced resident experience really happens when you still have your property, when you don't have your apartment flooded, when you don't have a fire. I think there's a lot of innovation that is happening around the leasing experience. We were talking a few days ago with someone who has the self-driving cars that are kind of driving the resident around to see different neighborhood key markers or things that are exciting in the neighborhood. So I think we'll see a lot more happening with that autonomous technology and how we can integrate it into our tours or integrate it into neighborhood tours or community tours, the greater area. And again, all things AI. I mean, it's a million different ways that people are using artificial intelligence to figure out what data they should be looking at and understand where they should develop next, to figuring out what their leasing teams need or want, or how they can respond faster and better. I know fraud is a huge conversation right now that we've all been talking about so much, and I'm seeing a lot of innovation around fraud and making sure that we're making good decisions, that we're not being taken advantage of. So there's almost so much happening right now, so much innovation, that it's hard to say these are my top 3 or those are my top 3, because I feel like everything is being innovated on all at once with multifamily right now.
And it really depends. I think that's what's unique too, is that then you can kind of look at your own company, your property management company, your own, and decide, like, based on what I stand for, what my mission of my company is, what my values are. Here's how I want, here's the types of technologies that I want to include into my overall tech stack, because sometimes something isn't going to be a good fit for a particular company. And I think that that's kind of cool too, is like, with all of this tech, it doesn't mean we all become cookie cutters of ourselves, all implementing the same things. It just means we now have options to make sure that we're fulfilling our mission and values as a company better, providing the customer experience that we're promising. And so I have a issue with AI, and that's not the right word, but how are companies figuring out how it all goes together? Like, are they, I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but this is a micro example, but like, I've found that when I look at specifically marketing AI technologies like, I don't, self-staged photos and ChatGPT, and you can make videos with the photos and just all these things, but like it's still a lot of work because then it's like all of these like segmented technologies that you have to then like Frankenstein together. And so are you seeing companies being able to overcome that challenge and have like almost a workflow that works across multiple technologies? How are those integrated? I mean, just I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm
I'm
seeing a lot more
curious.
focus on that. And one of the things that I find really interesting is I don't know if any of you have been in the world of software sales, like outside of multifamily, or know anyone who has, but in software sales forever, they have brokers, for lack of a better term, who put together a tech stack with you talk to them, Anne, and you would say, here are all the things I'm looking to evaluate. Here's what I currently have. And they say, this is the tech that would best suit your needs. And this is the one that would work best with what you already have and integrates well. So I think we're going to see more of that coming into our industry because there is just too much to evaluate. There's too much to figure out whether it integrates or not, whether this is going to all work well together and all play well in the sandbox. And so we are starting to see that third party kind of pop up and say, hey, we're experts in this. We're experts in figuring out what works well together, what systems don't slow down another system. And we'll see more of that coming around. And I don't know what they'll be called in our industry, but those sellers or brokers of tech who really are the experts, because one of the things we've been asking of everyone in multifamily, our executives who are in marketing and across the board, is for you to be an expert in everything. Right? You need to know all about the latest innovations with AI, and you need to know about how your software works, and you need to know about the resident experience and XYZ, all of these things. And how in the world could you be a demographics expert, an expert on technology, an expert on software, on all of that? It's just impossible. There's too much knowledge for one person to try to have to maintain it and figure out how to make it all make sense together. At least I think. So I think we'll see a lot more leaning on experts, subject matter experts, like truly, not just we say we're subject matter experts, but hey, can you recommend to us what is going to make the most sense for what we already have, the investments we've already made, what's going to give us the best ROI?
That's really, I feel like Salesforce has people like that, for example, these kind of, and even like Salesforce has like a marketplace you can go and kind of see what apps integrate, but you can hire a Salesforce like implementation specialist and they'll do what you're talking about. I feel like Microsoft has kind of that same. So that's really, that's very interesting. Like consultant slash technology implementation broker person. I like it.
I think we'll see a lot more of it. And really quick, I want to touch on something you said earlier, because this is something I am seeing a lot of, is that selection of prop tech and selection of innovation from a standpoint of like, what is your specific niche for your company or your property? There is a community that I am obsessed with in Minnesota, and they are building the entire community around the concept of residents having a sense of ownership, because they actually have a tiny stake in the ownership of the community. It's all very environmentally friendly. They're having a bunch of green initiatives, but every piece of tech that they're bringing in is to that end, right? Is to making sure that this is a sustainable community where their residents have a sense of ownership. They help to make decisions. They even get to make a decision about the next sets of investments. So the residents there have some say in what tech is brought in or where their investments go. And I think that is wild and so cool and so interesting. And we'll see more of that, I think, more decisions made from what you're saying. Like, I also think there is going to be a want. I'm seeing it with my kiddos where they're stepping back from tech, and what they want to have is a community that's going to promise them not to take any of their data, right? So I'm like, who's going to have the first, I keep calling it black box community, where you walk in and it's like there's no tech, right? We have old fashioned locks, and that's going to be the cool new hot thing because nobody wants the touch lock anymore, the keypad lock. And they're saying, this community is all about your data privacy or whatever. So I think those niche things, what we're going to see expanded and where we'll see a lot of innovation.
That's interesting. And I think that leads into marketing too, because then you're marketing to a niche group and it makes talking about your community. You're gonna, not everyone, I think we get into that sometimes. Like, well, anyone who needs a place to live is someone we want to be talking to. That's not true. Each community is unique and is different. And so, branding, understanding the customer experience and what we're trying to accomplish, that all leads into that marketing and being able to specialize it and have it be more effective.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm going backwards.
Everything that was, what do they say, is old is cool again at some point. Have you guys seen the dad sneakers these kids are wearing? I'm like, oh my, you were making fun of us for this 5 years ago, white dad sneakers.
I know this sounds really old school, and I've been doing this for 18 plus years too. But putting mirrors on the phone so you can see yourself smiling, or a mirror on the desk, like, I know that sounds so ridiculous, but it works because you can hear people, you can hear the smile, right?
Yep. I think there's a lot of, returning to basics. And, a lot of this is being pushed by the market too. And I'm speaking from kind of a Austin standpoint. We've had explosive growth, but we're seeing a decline in rents year over year. We're seeing a decline in occupancy. And I think with that comes that return to, hey, everybody's not just going to come beat down the door to have a place to live at your community. You've got to work for it and really cater to your customers and make them feel wanted and do the things well. Answer the question about the dog. Answer it. Smile when you answer the phone. These things make a difference. And so I think through 2025, and I hope the market turns around quickly, but as we see, things starting to cool off a little bit and our industry starting to kind of self-correct a little bit from our explosive growth we've had, that we'll see a return to everybody, well, at least some people having to figure out how to do those things really well, that it make a difference for them, that make them stand out among the crowd, that gives a better experience because our residents want that, our prospects want that. I think, we've done a great job over the last few years of having phenomenal growth. And if we want to continue to make a difference, you've got to focus on the details.
I think we want that as people. Like if we go to a restaurant, we want people to appreciate that we're there. If we go to a store, wherever, we want to at least be acknowledged and appreciated. So there isn't any reason that can't exist or shouldn't exist within multifamily. So we talked a lot about kind of innovations, how multifamily is moving forward. Anything specifically around marketing and how you're seeing marketers kind of innovate?
My goodness. I was talking with Paul McLean. I don't know if any of you know him or follow him, but I love him and adore him, about what is going to come up next for marketing and where are we headed. And one of my favorite hot topics right now to talk about with marketers is, and I'm going to say this and then go, oh, I hope no one is like turning me into the Google police, but is what I'm lovingly calling kind of the death of Google. And that,
yes,
right? Are you on this, Anne?
Yes, because Google is, have you ever tried to find information on Google? It's so annoying. It is literally like the most disjointed. You have to search and then you have to read and then you don't like it and then you have to go back and read again. And then it's always videos. I don't want to watch a video. Yeah. Yes, Chelsea, I could talk for 50 hours. Their search share I just saw is going down too. It used to be 97%. I think I saw something, if this is wrong, I'm sorry, but I thought I saw someone say it's around 90% now. So keep going. Keep talking about the death of Google. I'm in.
I know. I really do feel like can they hear me? Am I going to get turned in? Is there going to be a knock at my door in 5 minutes? If I disappear after this, y'all, Google's you know what? But so I am going to shout out another person who's brilliant that I adore, Marcus Armstrong, who's the director of research now with J. Turner Research. We did a study probably 2 years ago because Marcus and I had an idea that the way we have continued to be told that prospect search for apartments is not true. That is not how it's done. And everybody is focused so much on Google and long tail searches in Google. And I was like, nobody does this anymore. And this started with me sitting down with my teenager, opening up my laptop, and I said, if you had to look for an apartment right now, show me what you would do. And it just gave me an inkling that especially our younger generations are not doing the search the way that we've been told or that we thought that they did. So we did this broad study, and then we also did interviews where we sat and watched, like just watched how people searched, and it blew my mind. One, they started at specific websites that they knew. So wherever this website was that was specific to them, that their knowledge was, they did not go to Google and Google 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, Austin, Texas, near me, or whatever it was that we've had in our minds that it worked that way for years. They Googled the name of the website they were going to use to search for the apartment. That's what they typed into Google, right? And then when they got into that search, one of the other things that was wild to me was that they were searching like, oh, I'm going to look for an apartment in Austin, but I also thought I might move to Nashville, but I also thought Minnesota sounds cool, so I might live there too. And they were looking in this wild array, and it was not this search that, again, we focus so much on a 3-mile radius of what our market's doing or a 5-mile radius of our submarket. And I'm like, you are competing, and I'm using Austin as our example because this is, my spot. But if you're in Austin, in central Austin, you're competing with Nashville. That's your competition. It is not Lakeway or the suburbs of Austin or the surrounding areas. And I just think we haven't quite figured that out yet, how mobile our residents actually are and how much they're willing to move wherever. Chris, you moved from Southern California, right, to Dallas. Were you only choosing Dallas, or did you have some other spots that you were looking at?
Yeah, no, it was only Dallas. My wife had a here. Her parents were here. Yeah, but the pandemic happened, and that was the shift. Without the pandemic, we wouldn't have been here.
Yeah. It was just so wild to see this renter behavior of being wide open to so many options at a point when I thought, I would have had, again, I sound ridiculous, a budget, a specific, spot I wanted to live. I wanted to be right here by, this much of a commute to my work. And that is not how it works anymore. They were wide open with budgets too. And so I think from a marketing standpoint, how we're capturing that, how you're standing out amongst that much broader crowd, a much broader audience is going to be where there is a huge change and a lot of impact if we can figure that out.
Yeah, how do you go about like you said, you guys did a study, you literally sat people down, you watched them. That's really the tagline. We're better than living in Nashville. That's all I've got. Like, that's my only marketing change.
I think it's one of the things we've talked about of what is changing in our industry as a whole is we've often been so siloed geographically. What happened in California was not at all what was going on in Texas, wasn't at all what was happening on the East Coast. I worked in multifamily in Charleston, South Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia. And from Dallas, I felt like I was in a different world, like I'd just been dropped into a completely different world. And so I think what we'll start to see is more research and understanding. And from a marketing standpoint, what types of marketing are working in Charleston, South Carolina, because you might be getting prospects from Columbus, Ohio. And we need to look at that, right? So I think times are changing. And I know as other industries kind of went more global, I think we're kind of seeing that same trend, but in multifamily, it's becoming more open kind of nationally, at least in the US, of, okay, what matters overall, what is going to make a difference, and how do we capture folks who maybe aren't specifically looking to live in our city. I think we've taken for granted that people were looking because they wanted to live here. It's like we thought that driver was the first decision that was being made, and now that isn't the first decision that's being made, right? They're not deciding, I want to live in Miami or I want to live in wherever. A lot of folks are up for grabs, and the competition is a lot more than it's ever been.
That's interesting. So it's almost like you're selling a lifestyle of a city. It's like you're selling your city and that you'll get a great lifestyle that people are searching for because they're because Nashville and Austin are similar cities. I've thought about that too, even like, let's figure out where people are. This is a little different than what you're talking about, but like, let's figure out where people are moving from. Like, why shouldn't Town Properties have an ad in a subway in New York that
Yes.
says, like, moving to Cincinnati, check out our apartments. Like,
Yeah.
that is possible. There's nothing from stopping us, except
There's no reason. Have y'all not seen like I love these states. I don't think it's their Chamber of Commerce. It's like, I don't know what it is, but there's state associations that like it's 120 in Texas in the summer, and there will literally be an ad on a billboard here that's like, Minnesota's nice, and it shows like 80-degree weather or whatever. But we haven't really done that as an apartment industry, and I think there's something to that we should look at and see, how we can market to people who are outside of our specific metros and or even our submarkets. Man, we get so focused on that really small submarket, which is important for a lot of metrics, but people do not only look in that really small radius anymore. It's just not that behavior, I think, is over.
there's so much. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to go do so much work. Which is good.
And that happens every podcast. You create homework for yourself.
Yeah. What rabbit hole are we going to go down?
Rabbit hole. Chris, we should do then a follow-up of like how many do we actually do something with. That a whole different discussion, a whole different day. Anything else marketers should be thinking about, or anything that you're seeing marketers think about?
I think that marketers should be thinking about what it looks like for, from the beginning of the search to the end of the search, through the move-in process, all the way to that renewal process, and actually walking through it. When was the last time we tested all of that beginning to end, right? And sat down and really saw, are my questions being answered in my emails? Is the phone being answered? How is a prospect finding us? How is a prospect who's looking to move from Ohio to Charleston, South Carolina, gonna see us, or how will we appear to them? And really sitting down, taking a day or 2 days or however long that would take to look through all of that. I think that is what marketers should be doing right now to start. I know there's so many things, there's so much noise, there's so much tech and innovation, but if we don't know what's going on in our own backyards, it's going to be really hard to figure out where to direct our ship next. So sounds so old fashioned. I feel like the old lady in the room, y'all, being like, do you know how it feels to be a prospect? But I do think we've gotten so inundated with data and reporting. I'm going to tell a really short story, but there is this amazing story. I'll try to send it to everyone about Lego. How Lego was looking at data to make all of their decisions. Their sales were declining. This was years ago. They couldn't quite figure out why. And they finally hired this team of consultants. And what they did was they went into the home of a child and watched this child play to try to figure out what kids loved and why it was they loved or didn't love Legos. And the things that they found out from that home visit, for lack of a better term or whatever to call it, disregarded, or not disregarded, but told more of a story than just the data. And I think because we've gotten so data heavy and made so many decisions around the analytics and focusing on numbers, we're not always seeing that full organic story and the full piece of humanity of what's going on, right? But what people want. They made so many changes based off of what they saw in that visit, and that turned their company around and really accelerated their growth and set them ahead and made them a fierce competitor. And it changed the trajectory of Lego as we know it forevermore. And so I'm so excited to see who does that, right? Who's going to go find out what it actually feels like, because we can have all the tech and all the data in the world, and that does tell an important part of the story, but there's another part of it that I think we just haven't grasped yet.
I think that's interesting. And I think it's doable. When you started talking, I was like, but we have over 100 properties, and how are we going to do that? And I'm like, my mind's like freaking out. But then I remembered Stacy Hampton, who we spoke with on our last episode. She talked about how she prioritizes her properties based on trend. And so she looks at properties that have 10% more exposure. Chris does the same thing. We do this. I mean, we do the same thing, but and I was like, wait a minute, that is doable then, because if you think about it from that standpoint, you're only going to have 10% of your properties, let's say, on that list. Well, that's 10 properties. That's doable. And you just start with one. It doesn't have to be done tomorrow. You just start with one, and then you tackle it. And then you go to the next one, and then you go to the next one. And so I think, if anyone listening was kind of thinking the same thing that I was, like, but my team isn't very, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, it is doable. All of this is doable, and it's necessary.
Well, even just how much you can learn from a random sampling. So, goodness, of course, y'all, please don't come for me with pitchforks. I can't imagine trying to ask our marketing teams to go to every property and sit through every, piece of the puzzle everywhere. That doesn't work. But maybe you have a community that is not seeing as many renewals as you would think overall. How wildly imperative would it be for you to pick up the phone? I know Anne hates being on the phone, but
I like being on the phone. I just don't like answering. That scares me.
But call a couple of those renewals and find out, ask them.
Yeah.
Let's ask them and find out why. I bet there are nuggets of knowledge that would be huge and make such a difference in your decision making if we found out from the human what was going on with this very human interaction. And it doesn't have to be 1,000 calls a day, but let's just talk to a couple people. The insights we gained from just watching human behavior were so wild that so often that's what I want marketers to do is like, hey, I know you're busy. I know you have a lot going on, but take an afternoon and let's go watch the human behavior. Let's make a few phone calls and see. Let's get a random sampling of what's going on. And I think it would be incredibly impactful for your decisions for the rest of 2025.
Just a tidbit. I did this recently and went to a property, wanted to know why maybe we're not leasing as well. Talked to the team. They said, you got to go look at the floors on the third floor. And I did. And I walked it for 45 minutes and it made a difference. And then we went and got them cleaned. But there are a lot of tidbits when you go out to property and you actually listen to the teams and you listen to the prospects.
Yeah. So maybe the newest tech and innovation is going to be figuring out how to get those insights quicker or more efficiently, but we have got to get up from behind our desks, as hard as that is, wherever they might be. If you work from home or whatever, we've got to figure out how to fix that disconnect and understand what's really going on.
Well, part of it too is creating a sense of security for the on-site staff to trust the corporate staff. Everybody's rowing in the same direction and we don't know unless they tell us. So that's part of it too, is opening up that communication.
There is a huge and strong connection between your employee satisfaction and your resident satisfaction. And I have been talking about it for years. And it is impossible for your employees to care about your residents if they don't think that you care about them. It's impossible, right? Your teams have to know they're cared for, that we care about their insights, that we want to hear their insights, and that we're going to do something about it. Chris, I bet the impact you had by going, I'll go look at it, instead of saying, I'll write that down and I'll get around to looking at it, that action on something that they brought up, that concern, is huge. And that's the same thing for residents, right? So they saw that behavior, and I hope that team now, when a resident comes with a concern, is going to take action as well, because they saw that modeled for them.
Chelsea, thank you so much for being here, by the way. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me. What a joy. My brain is going crazy. I had so much fun talking to you guys, and I've got so many things to go look up now. And
Chelsea, you have given us so much to think about. I can't even begin. But I think that, the insights that you've given us, the trends that you're really seeing, you've given us actionable insights. I mean, I think everyone listening can kind of take one thing that you've said that is a good fit for their company or business and really run with it. And so we couldn't ask for anything more. I want to thank you. I want to thank Carlos, our producer, who makes us sound great. I want to thank my co-host, Chris. And until next time, this is the Apartment Department.